Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is your Sensei Al Bob coming to you as your Riyadh. So, what story do you want to hear? It's summertime. Summertime stories? You know, when I grew up, pretty much from the time I was born, I was farmed out to my grandma. Right? I mean, I spent the first 6 with my folks, and the first time I electrocuted my mom at 6 months, um, you know, I was sent off to grandma's, which is fine. I was very blessed to be brought up by grandma, who was unconditionally loving. And so every time I would go home, after I was 7, mostly it was for vacation, right? And my dad was really, he loved over the rice and loved taking a trip, putting us all in a station wagon and taking off. And and my mom kind of, you know, she was in control of everything, so it was not a big deal. And we kind of went to places she wanted to go, and, and that was okay. And so it was always, that was the day to day at our house. Not so good. Right? You ever seen the movie The Great Santini? That could be my dad, right? He didn't fly jet planes, but he organized the Air Force. So he could get, he was Italian. He could get carried. He never beat us. He never hurt us. But screaming and yelling and smashing, ripping doors off their hinges and throwing them around the room, and punching through walls. It's not me. I grew up with my grandma, so the first time he did that, I was like about 7 years old, and I was like, this is interesting. It was my sisters and brothers who grew up with that were like, oh. So I was the least affected by them, and I was very analyzing, right? I analyzed everything. My first wife called me a compassionate computer, right? So that's kind of how this rolled, and I enjoyed our vacation. So whenever we went on vacation, no matter what it was, where it was, what it was, I was having a good time. And until I was 10, I would always get sick. So I tried to, I was always a guy navigating, the terrible, right? Every time I got sick, I was like always, death was always waiting over in the corner. I mean, I got to know death real well. We became buds actually. And so every time I died, he said, "Not yet. Get up." I would. Remember, I basically, the first time I died, not being sick after 10, I guess I was, oh, I guess I was 11 when I made that bubble chamber, which is like, the next step before a hydrogen bomb. And I was smart enough not to play with it inside the house. I was outside by the out away from the house on the driveway, right? And so I got all the parameters going. It wouldn't do what I wanted to do. And I just spent weeks building this thing and finding all these exotic materials. And and I only had so much dry ice. I had to, it had to be near absolute zero, but dry ice doesn't quite get absolute zero. Close enough to make ether, close enough to make an electromagnetic uh, dynamic. And it was building and building and building, but it just wouldn't pop into what I wanted it to do. So I kind of got up frustrated and kicked it. You should never kick a volatile um, witch's brew of something being kept in homeostasis by a not too good electromagnetic field. And so what happened? It field collapsed, and the witch's brew just took off. and I was a bit too close to it. And so my mother was driving in um, to the into the driveway, and she was in her favorite gold Cadillac 1961 with those looked like a rocket ship, right? And she drove in, and just as she was driving in, I was enveloped in this sun, and not explosion, not a fire, but wow, right? And you know, she kind of freaked out and kind of went like this to get away from it. She was holding the steering wheel, and she drove the car straight into the in-ground swimming pool. Luckily, that she went into the shallow end, because she went into the deep end, she would have been, dead. So I had to get her out of the car. And I was enveloped, and there death was. He's like in the big ball. He said, "Come closer," And he lifted. He always wore this. He looked like he slept in his clothes, and I'm sure he did. He always looked like a guy from a mortuary, and black suit, white, shirt, black tie, but his coat was big, and he lifted his coat up and kind of threw it over me, and wow, right, and it was the sun, and then it collapsed upon itself, and when it all went, and every bit of hair was. Why I have these crazy eyebrows? All my eyebrows, eyelashes, every bit of hair all over my body, right, and I had like a severe sunburn. Like I was like that color, right, red, right, and I had no hair. I looked like a lobster Yul Brenner, right, and I felt I was still on fire, so I took off towards the swimming pool, jumped in, cold water, very nice, chlorine, not so much. And I was about to jump out, and I saw my mom's in the car is there, and she's like, holding the steering wheel like this. And so I went over there and kind of got her out and got her up the steps. And she was like a drenched rat. And she looked at me, and she was just in shock. And then all of a sudden, her eyes blinked, and she put her hands around my neck. And I had been choked by a nun. I've been murdered by a nun. So my neck has always been very sensitive, right? And it still is. But it's not sensitive. When I lived with a Shinto priest in Putney, Vermont, he taught me Aikido and jujitsu, and so I'm pretty good at protecting myself, and even at this age, meaning I never started a fight, but I can protect myself. So and I know how to protect my vulnerable spots, and they're not too vulnerable anymore. It's like I had this operation, and they were trying to put a line in me, and they couldn't believe. They said, well, your skin is so soft, but you're like, the needle won't get in. I said, let me show you how to do it. And it freaked this poor nurse out, because I put the line in my own arm. And the other nurse, who was the old one, she kind of chuckled and said, she leaned over to me. She goes, "So obviously you don't do drugs, but boy, you are really good at putting that line away. Were you phlebotomist?" I said, "No, I'm an EMT, first responder, hospital EMT." "Oh, you're one of those." "Oh, okay." And I go, my veins roll around a lot. So anyway, and that was like the buzz of the ICU that I was in. That this guy just put in his own needle, and he's not a drug addict, and drug addicts, they're like a pincushion, it's like their veins don't roll around. They are like, forget about it. Anyway, so so luckily I've had the eye surgery in both eyes, and this eye is probably 80% better than it was, and this one's about 60 or 40, between 46. This is weepy eye. This is the eye the nun broke the orbit in, so that eye has always been a little. I was blind in it for a long time. Not blind, but really. But what it really did was enabled me to see other frequencies, other dimensions. That's why I can read people so well. I can see their energetics, and so I'm hanging out with a group of people who right now a new group of people, and they're like, it's a large community, and they are, wondering who the heck I am. So, but they're being entertained. The kids are back. Anyway, so I might have to leave. I think I will. Well, I'll see how many of them, if they're going to be running around. Ah, ah. Oh. So is everyone coming back? Yes. Anyway, yes, everyone's coming back. So, anyway, I just wanted to touch base with you guys, say hello, goodbye. No one showed up in 11 minutes and 11 seconds, so I will say bye. Okay. End stream. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow.